My boyfriend and I just had a baby when his ex-mother-in-law suddenly claimed the child was her grandchild, causing chaos at the hospital. Okay, Reddit, I really need some advice. I'm 29 years old, and my 30-year-old partner Mark and I just welcomed our daughter Lily 2 weeks ago. Lily is incredible, healthy, and the utter joy of our lives. Getting here, however, has been a daytime soap opera-worthy drama, and it all boils down to two really tough mothers, my ex-mother-in-law and Mark's mother. To comprehend the current situation, I need to give you some background. I was previously married, however briefly. I met my ex-husband David, 31 million, when I was 22. We were young, impetuous, and believed we were madly in love. We got married after roughly 8 months of dating. It was a fiasco nearly from the beginning. We were simply fundamentally incompatible. We disagreed about everything, from how to load the dishwasher, really, to our long-term objectives. He wanted to stay in our small hometown forever, purchase a house with a white picket fence, and start having children right away. In my late 20s, I wanted to focus on my job and perhaps consider having children. We had been married for a little more than a year before we recognized it was a mistake. There was no dramatic outburst, no infidelity, just a quiet, agonizing awareness that we were making each other unhappy. We chose to divorce. It was unexpectedly amicable. We didn't detest each other, we simply realized we were better off apart. We did not have any shared assets or children, so the legal process was relatively simple. My parents were supportive. They were never major fans of David. They felt he was dull, to be honest, and all they wanted was for me to be happy. But David's mother was quite different. Let us call her Susan. She is the type of lady who has her entire life planned out, and she wants everyone around her to follow suit, whether they want it or not. She is also profoundly devout, believing that divorce is a sin regardless of the circumstances. Susan had an image of David and me as the ideal conventional couple. She was distraught when we broke up. She tried everything to convince us to work things out, including guilt trips, tearful phone calls, and even an unannounced visit to my apartment with a marriage counselor. It was quite awkward and uncomfortable. I tried to be courteous and considerate, but I needed to be firm. I told her that while I appreciated her concern, the choice was final. The divorce was settled approximately 7 years ago. I relocated to a different city, found a terrific job, and began a completely new life. I severed off touch with David and Susan. It was not out of malice, it was simply essential for me to move on. We were not social media pals, and we had no shared friends, so it was a clean break. Then, around 1.5 years ago, I met Mark. We met during a work conference. We started conversing during a coffee break and instantly clicked. He was humorous, smart, and kind, and we shared a love of travel and adventure. We exchanged numbers and began dating shortly after. Mark knew about my prior marriage from the start. It was not a secret. I told him the whole tale on our second date, and he was unconcerned. He claimed it was in the past, and it didn't change his feelings about me. He'd been in a couple long-term relationships before, so he knew that not everything works out. We fell in love instantly. It was different from my relationship with David. Mark made it feel effortless, natural, and exciting. We had a lot in common and really loved each other's company. Around 6 months into our relationship, I met Mark's parents. His father, John, is the loveliest, most laid-back person you will ever meet. He greeted me warmly and made me feel right at home. Mark's mother, Carol, had a different narrative. Carol is complex. She is highly polished, very proper, and very opinionated. She's also quite attached to Mark, her only child. From the time I met her, I could tell she was assessing me and finding flaws in me. She was cordial, but there was a noticeable coolness in the air. She made a few subtle digs at my divorce, nothing overtly nasty, but things like, "Oh, you've been married before? That's interesting." Or, "I always believed that marriage is forever, no matter what." She also stated that she anticipated Mark to settle down and have a typical family, just as Susan had wished for David. I attempted to brush it off. I assumed she was simply protective of her son, and I hoped she'd warm up to me gradually. But she never actually did. She was always nice, but never truly friendly. She'd ask me questions about my profession and my family, but it felt more like an interrogation than a conversation. Then, around 8 months ago, I discovered I was pregnant. It was a nice surprise. Mark and I had talked about having kids in the future, but we weren't actively trying. We were both excited though. We chose not to marry immediately away. I'd already been through one hasty wedding and didn't want to go through it again. I wanted to be sure that we were getting married for the right reasons, not just because we were expecting a child. Mark fully understood and supported my decision. We informed our family. My parents were overjoyed. They had always wanted grandchildren. John was equally excited. He began talking about building a treehouse and teaching the infant to fish. Carol, as one could expect, was unhappy. She didn't say anything directly unpleasant, but her displeasure was obvious. She continued saying things like, "Well, I suppose it's not the traditional way to do things." And, "I just hope you're both prepared for the challenges of parenthood." She also began implying strongly that we should marry before the kid arrived. The pregnancy itself went relatively smoothly. I had some morning sickness in the first trimester, but overall I felt fine. Mark was quite supportive. He attended all of my doctor's appointments, read all of the baby books, and even began learning to cook, which was a little miracle. Throughout the pregnancy, Carol was a source of stress. She'd contact me on a regular basis, purportedly to check in, but the calls were always more like lectures. She would advise me what I should eat, how much I should exercise, and which parenting books I should read. She even sent me a list of recommended baby names, all of which were quite outdated and stuffy. I tried to be patient and understanding. I understood she was simply trying to help in her own way, but it was exhausting. I felt as though I was constantly being scrutinized and chastised. Then, approximately a month before my due date, something totally unexpected occurred. I received a text message from an unfamiliar phone number. The message went, "Is this OP? It's Susan, David's mom. We need to talk. It's about the baby." My heart sank. I hadn't communicated with Susan in years. Why is she approaching me now? And what did she mean by "it's about the baby"? I showed Mark the text. He was just as perplexed as I was. We decided that I should contact her back and see what was going on. I called Susan, and she instantly answered. She sounded frantic. She responded, "I know this is going to sound crazy, but I think the baby you're carrying is David's." I was speechless. I honestly could not understand what she was saying. "What? Susan, that's impossible. I haven't seen David in years." She mentioned that she saw a photo of me on social media. Apparently, one of my distant relatives had tagged me in a photo, and I was obviously pregnant. She'd done some research, which I'm pretty sure included researching my online profiles, and determined that the timing was suitable. She was sure that I had secretly reconciled with David and that this baby was his. I tried to politely convey to her that she was entirely wrong. I informed her about Mark and how long we had been together, but she would not listen. She insisted that I was lying and that I should come clean for the sake of the baby. The chat concluded with her threatening to show up at the hospital if I went into labor. I hung up the phone, thoroughly shaken and confused. I told Mark everything. He was infuriated. He couldn't believe Susan had accused me of something so absurd. He wanted to call her and tell her what was on his mind, but I urged him not to. I did not want to exacerbate the matter. We decided to ignore Susan and hope she'd come to her senses. We assumed she was simply grabbing at straws, eager for her son to have a child. Then, 2 weeks ago, I went into labor. After a long and arduous labor, our beautiful daughter Lily was born. Mark was with me the whole time, and he was incredible. We were in the recovery room, fatigued but elated, when there was a ruckus outside the door. Susan burst into the room, followed by a confused-looking security guard. She began to scream, "That's my grandchild. I know it. You need to tell the truth. You've been lying to everyone." It was a total nightmare. I was still in recovery from childbirth. I was hormonal, and I felt completely humiliated. Mark intervened and told Susan to go, but she refused. It required 2 security personnel to forcibly remove her from the room. The entire situation was quite disturbing. I was furious with Susan. When we returned home from the hospital, I decided to phone David. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but I felt compelled to clear the air and ensure he understood what his mother had done. He answered the phone, clearly astonished to hear from me. I explained the scenario, and he was shocked. He apologized profusely for his mother's actions. He said that he had been dating a new woman, Serene. Serene and I have a similar first name, but not precisely the same. Imagine my name is Serena, and hers is Serene. Similar, but not the same. David had been keeping Serene a secret from his mother. Susan was fascinated with him remarrying and having children, and he didn't want to deal with her expectations. Susan had apparently overheard David's phone conversation with Serene around a month ago. She misheard the name and assumed he uttered my name. She assumed right away that David and I had reconciled. David, being a bit of a coward, his words, not mine, had not corrected her. He reasoned that it was better to let her think whatever she wanted than to cope with her reaction to his new connection. He explained that I intended to keep things quiet, which is why she had not heard from me. Susan's sister was also in the hospital for a routine appointment on the day I went into labor. She'd only met me a few times years ago, but she was aware of Susan's preoccupation with me and David. When she saw me, very pregnant, being brought to labor and delivery, she immediately contacted Susan. Susan ended up at my hospital room, thinking that I was carrying her grandson. David apologized profusely. He claimed he was an idiot who should have told his mother the truth a long time ago. He also told me that he tried to speak with his mother, but she refused to believe him. She was convinced he was only covering for me. He stated he and Susan were moving to another state to be closer to Serene, so I wouldn't have to worry about her anymore. I told him I appreciated his apology, but what he and his mother had done was extremely devastating. I told him I didn't want to speak with him or Susan again. Mark was listening to the entire exchange. He was infuriated. He claimed he couldn't believe David and Susan had been so selfish and irresponsible. It established that I wasn't crazy, but it didn't address the larger issue, Carol. Mark informed his parents about the incident in the hospital. Of course, John was outraged. He could not believe Susan would do something so outrageous. Carol, on the other hand, remained unusually quiet. She did not defend Susan, and she did not criticize her either. She simply stated, "Well, it's certainly a complicated situation." A few days later, Carol came to see us. She brought a gift for Lily, a really costly baby blanket that was completely not my style. She held Lily for a few minutes, fawning over her, and then got down to business. She went on. "Mark, I've been thinking a lot about this whole situation, and I think for everyone's peace of mind, it would be best if you got a paternity test." I was stunned. I couldn't believe she was making that suggestion. Mark glanced at me, his eyes filled with a mix of rage and remorse. He responded, "Mom, I'm not doing that. I trust OP completely. This is ridiculous." Carol did not back down. She responded, "It's not about trust, Mark. It's about being responsible. You need to know for sure. What if Susan is right? What if this baby is David's?" I eventually spoke up. I corrected myself. "Carol, I can assure you this baby is Mark's. I haven't been with anyone else since we met. This is insulting." She fixed me with a harsh, hard stare. "I'm just trying to protect my son," she explained. "I'm sure you understand." The conversation deteriorated from there. It ended with Mark telling his mother that he would not even contemplate a paternity test and that if she couldn't trust him and respect his relationship with me, she wasn't welcome in our family. She stormed out, and we haven't heard from her again. Mark tried calling her several times, but she would not answer. John has phoned Mark, and he is really furious about the situation. He's caught in the center and doesn't know what to do. So, Reddit, here I am. I'm a new mom navigating the responsibilities of parenting while simultaneously dealing with this terrible family drama. I'm upset and angry that Carol would question my honesty and Mark's paternity. I'm also concerned about the long-term influence on Mark's connection with his mother. I informed Carol that if she wanted to continue pressing the DNA test issue, she could kick rocks. I didn't say those exact words, I was more polite, but the message was clear. I told her that if she couldn't accept Lily as Mark's daughter without proof, she didn't have to be a member of our family. Aita? I want Mark to have a relationship with his mother, but I also refuse to be treated so disrespectfully. And I certainly do not want my daughter to grow up with someone who doubts her parentage. Any tips or recommendations will be considered. Update 1. Wow. I did not anticipate this post to get that viral. Thank you to everyone for their encouragement and wisdom. It's been quite reassuring to learn that I'm not crazy, and that Carol's behavior is utterly out of character. Many of you suggested that I talk to Mark about having clear boundaries with his mother, and you are completely correct. I had been postponing the talk because I was fatigued and did not want to deal with any more turmoil, but it had to happen. So, last night, after Lily was sleeping, Mark and I had a long conversation. Carol's demand for a paternity test wounded and disrespected me, and I told him so. I also expressed concern about the damage this was having on his relationship with his father John. Mark absolutely understood. He stated that he was furious with his mother, not only for the paternity test request, but also for her behavior throughout my pregnancy. He explained that he had been making excuses for her for years, but he was finally seeing her for who she truly is, a controlling, manipulative woman who is more concerned with her personal image than her son's pleasure. He told me he tried contacting her again, but she still did not answer. He left her a voicemail in which he expressed his disappointment with her and stated that he would not contact her again unless she apologized to me and accepted Lily as his daughter, no questions asked. He also mentioned he had spoken with John again. John is heartbroken by the circumstances. He adores Carol, but he also understands that she is in the wrong. He told Mark that he was thinking of staying with us for a while to get away from Carol and spend more time with Lily. Mark and I agreed to welcome John with open arms. We have an extra bedroom and Lily adores him. It would be wonderful to have his assistance, and it would also provide him with a reprieve from his toxic home situation. Some of you questioned my parents and why they weren't more involved. That's a valid question, and I should have addressed it in the original piece. My folks live fairly far away, on the opposite side of the country, actually. They are likewise in their late 50s and not in good health. Traveling vast distances is quite difficult for them, especially given the current constraints and worries. We communicate to them on video calls virtually every day, and they adore Lily even from a distance. They are really supportive of me and Mark, and they were outraged when I told them about Susan's outburst in the hospital and Carol's subsequent behavior. They wish they could aid, but they are physically unable to do so. They send their love and support, which means everything to me. They also stated that if John needed a place to crash, they would gladly contribute some money and urged me to find him a suitable retirement home. It was quite sweet of them. So that's where things are right now. Carol is still giving us the quiet treatment. John is considering moving in with us. Mark and I are attempting to concentrate on being parents to our wonderful little girl. I'm no longer attempting to placate Carol or avoid her sentiments. I'm prioritizing my family, which is what matters most. I will keep you informed of any additional developments. Thank you for your continued support. Update 2, things have intensified. John arrived to stay with us a few days ago. He arrived with a small luggage and a very sorrowful attitude. He explained that Carol had rarely spoken to him since Mark's last phone contact. She was cold and distant, and he couldn't take it anymore. He spent the first day largely snuggling Lily and talking with Mark. He seemed relieved to be free of the stress and negativity. He kept emphasizing how much he loved Lily and was happy for the opportunity to spend time with her. Carol then showed up uninvited at our door yesterday. I was in the nursery, feeding Lily, when the doorbell rang. Mark responded, and I could hear Carol's voice, loud and strident. When I entered the living room, I noticed a tight atmosphere. Carol stood in the doorway, enraged. John sat on the couch, looking defeated. Mark was standing between them with his arms crossed. Carol requested that John return home immediately. She complained that he was being foolish and was humiliating her. She accused me of manipulating him and using him against her. John attempted to speak, but Carol stifled him. She just kept shouting and raving, accusing me of various things. Mark finally had enough. He informed Carol unequivocally that she needed to leave. He stated that she was not welcome in our home unless she apologized to me and embraced Lily without reservation. Carol appeared shocked. She obviously wasn't used to Mark standing up to her. She stuttered for a while before turning on her heels and storming out, slamming the door behind her. The whole situation was quite stressful. I felt terrible for John. He seemed lost and confused. He continually apologized to me, even though he had done nothing wrong. Mark and I reassured him that he could stay with us as long as he needed. We told him we loved him and were glad we had him. After John had gone to bed, Mark and I talked. We both agreed that Carol's actions were totally wrong. We determined that we needed to establish even stricter boundaries. Mark texted Carol that we would be in no communication until she sought professional help for her controlling conduct and apologized to both me and John. He said that we loved her, but we couldn't let her continue to insult us and ruin our lives. It's been a few days since we've heard from her. I am not sure what to expect. Update 3. It had been roughly a week since Carol's dramatic visit. We haven't heard anything from her, no calls, texts, angry emails, nothing. John, on the other hand, has settled in well. He's a big help to Lily, and he obviously enjoys spending time with her. He reads to her, sings to her, and takes her on walks in the stroller. It is heartwarming to watch. He's also become more candid about his marriage. He told Mark and me that he has been unhappy for years. He claimed that Carol has always been controlling, but it has gotten worse over time. He feels that he's lost himself in the relationship and has been going through the motions. He began attending a therapist, which Mark and I encouraged. He believes it's helping him process his emotions and figure out what he wants for the future. He isn't sure if he wants to stay married to Carol, even if she apologizes. He claims he needs to think about what is best for him for once. Mark totally supports his father, whatever he decides. He's just thrilled John's finally sticking up for himself. As for me, I'm attempting to concentrate on Lily and on building a quiet, loving environment for our family. I'm still upset and outraged over Carol's actions, but I'm trying not to let them consume me. I've started thinking about returning to work part-time. My maternity leave is nearly over, and I miss using my abilities. Mark is entirely on board, and John has offered to assist with childcare. We are also starting to arrange Lily's first birthday party. The party will be modest and exclusive, with only close relatives and friends. Obviously, Carol will not be invited. It's strange to consider celebrating a huge milestone without Mark's mother present, but I just don't see any other option. She made her decision, and she must deal with the consequences. I'm still hopeful that one day she'll see reason and apologize, but I'm not holding my breath. Update 4. A few tiny but major events have occurred. First, John applied for legal separation from Carol. He spoke with a lawyer and determined that it was the best course of action, at least for now. He explained that he needed to create some formal gap between them. He informed Carol of his decision, and she did not take it well. She called Mark, yelling and crying, accusing him of turning his father against her. Mark stayed calm, telling her that John had made his own decision and she should respect it. After a few days, we received a letter from Carol's lawyer. It was a cease and desist letter, requesting that we stop disseminating false and defamatory material about her. Apparently, she claims that we have been telling others that she is mentally ill and a lousy grandma. It's utterly ludicrous, of course. We haven't discussed her with anyone other than John's therapist, which is strictly secret. We're fairly certain she's just attempting to bully and scare us into backing down. Mark consulted his own lawyer, who urged us to disregard the letter. He claimed it was unfounded and Carol had no legal basis to stand on. So, that is where we are. John is legally separated from Carol, and we are facing a ridiculous legal threat. It's all quite stressful, but we're trying to remain strong and unified. On a more positive note, Lily is flourishing. She's growing and maturing so quickly. She began babbling and smiling continuously. She is the most lovely little child, and she brings so much happiness into our life. Now to the next story, story 2. I thought I was just being clumsy. But then I found proof that my boyfriend was booby-trapping our apartment and now I am running for my life. Original post. I manage a team of 12 people and last year had a 13th member added when other managers refused to deal with him any longer. He is diagnosed with depression and generalized anxiety disorder. He is morbidly obese and suffers from musculoskeletal problems related to obesity and diabetes. When they came to me it was because I have helped other mentally ill staff members and I was happy to take them on as I felt I could help them. We did make progress and steadily increased their level of work. It has never reached the level considered acceptable, but I made accommodations to relieve pressure, hoping this would lead to a sustained long-term improvement. I sought out equipment to help them be more physically comfortable given their obesity. I felt we were making progress. Unfortunately, they committed a serious breach of security, sent out personal information to someone not legally entitled to have it, and I had to place them on formal disciplinary action. Since then they have been on sick leave for over 3 months. They are now subject to attendance management procedures and have reached out to a local mental health group and advised them that I have bullied and harassed them. This bullying and harassment has, according to them, has made it impossible for them to return to work. I have documented evidence that this is not true. When they were told they needed to move away from me for health and safety reasons, they became very distressed and demanded to stay with me for mental health reasons. I have signed documentation where they state I am supportive and they don't want the reasonable accommodations I have offered, shorter days, fewer days, longer breaks, etc. I have a meeting with them and their support workers from the mental health group and I have no idea how to handle this. So how do I handle it? I can prove they are lying and they have a pattern of lying to get themselves out of trouble. I have no concerns about my bosses because they are well aware that this is an utterly unfounded allegation. My worry is that they are completely unsuited to the job and because they point blank refuse to acknowledge they are in any way responsible for the mistakes they are making, it is impossible to correct them. TLDR have been accused of bullying when I haven't relevant comments. When told to go to HROUP, I have spoken with our internal HR, but they are terrified that any accusations of bullying a person with mental health problems could be problematic, as it is a hot topic at present. I have referred the person for counseling internally and they have told me repeatedly, documented, that they have taken up this service. My concern is this meeting is not an internal meeting, it is with people who specifically represent people with mental health problems, and I don't know how to respectfully say that the person is lying through their teeth without sounding like a bully. To be clear, their lies aren't malicious and I don't believe this one is either. It is something said to solve an immediate need, so in this case it is because they need to explain the amount of time they have had off sick, and admitting it is because of their own actions is too terrifying. So, I am being bullied, means it's something that is happening to them and they have no control over it. The reality is they do have control over it, but they are so used to being the victim in all situations that they refuse to acknowledge this is not actually true. Comment: judging from your explanation here, It appears that you have an understanding and empathetic attitude toward this person and situation. That attitude, along with the documentation you have regarding accommodations you've offered, should go a long way in your defense. What, exactly, is he saying you've done to bully him? I am not a professional in this area, just have extensive experience working with people with mental health problems in social work education settings. OP. He believes that by pointing out his security breach and substandard level of work I have bullied him. He doesn't allege that he isn't doing this, just that by expecting more I am bullying and harassing him. I am making allowances. For example, other members of staff are expected to deal with approximately 16 cases a day accurately. I am happy for him to do 2 if he does them right. Unfortunately, he can do 2 cases but not correctly. Unfortunately, by allowing him to work at a slower pace, he believes that he should be allowed the same scope of error that someone who is working 16 cases, and as such he is being bullied by expecting him to get his 2 cases 100% right when someone who is working 16 cases has an allowance for minor errors. OOP explains HR more. Yeah, HR's response is basically fire him but don't leave us open to a lawsuit. It is not helpful because I don't want to fire him. He is not currently in a position to do his job to the standard required, but I don't want to detrimentally impact his future. He won't resign for health reasons as he feels it will prevent him getting another job, and HR want him gone without actually doing anything. I'm stuck in the middle because as manipulative as his mental health issues are, they are real. If I wouldn't get fired for doing it, I'd post a copy of the 4-page email I got in response to my specific questions. It was large swathes of the DDA copied and pasted with vague remarks about support, reasonable allowances, and work-life balance. I can only assume they put someone's idiot nephew in charge of the email box on the day I contacted them. They are centralized and are notorious for not giving out specific instructions for fear of having them challenged. Their main purpose is to protect themselves. I have no idea how they keep their jobs, to be honest. Whoop. Last comment. Thank you. His previous warnings have been well documented and evidenced, so I am not too concerned about legal action. I was just really thrown off by the accusation of bullying and harassment and had built up a scenario where I was going to be attacked by his advocates. The great responses like yours has put my mind at ease. It is sad that he has cast himself as the victim in all of this, but I am determined not to be drawn into that mindset, and I won't allow myself to cast into the role of their oppressor because it is simply not true. Update September 18, 2017, 3 months later. Well, the meeting went ahead as planned, and thanks to the wonderful advice and tips from people who kindly responded, I was calm and thought I was prepared. Boy, was I wrong. My colleague and his support worker were both there, and the meeting started really well. I asked how he was doing, what steps he was taking to prepare himself to return to work, etc., and nothing unexpected came up. As arranged, I brought up the allegations of bullying and asked for some specific examples to help me understand what was happening. After worrying myself sick about this, his answer was actually pretty disappointing. He gave no examples and only offered vague explanations about his anxiety making him overreact to other people's conversations, which made him feel like he was being picked on. I advised him, and my boss backed me up, that there was literally nothing I could do about that. I patiently explained that I could not ban people from talking and I would not sit in silence in order to ensure that he never heard anything he didn't like. My boss stressed that his poor performance needed to be addressed and that was part of my job, and that doing it was in no way harassment. His support worker did agree with that, and we had a brief chat about how I could better communicate. To be honest, there was nothing they said that was particularly helpful, but I did agree to be mindful of their condition moving forward. Then it got weird. I asked if there was anything I could do to help him transition back into work. This normally involves a phased return, changing to part-time hours, etc., but not this time. As I was talking, he started taking paperwork out of a folder, and I should have realized something was up when his support worker sighed deeply and slumped down in his chair. My colleague requested that he be allowed to bring an emotional support animal to work with him, namely a support cat. We are in the UK and this is not the norm, so I was a bit surprised. He had not settled on a breed yet but was torn between an Abyssinian or a Siamese. I thought pointing out some obvious difficulties with this idea might make him realize how inappropriate this would be. For example, I pointed out we have a guide dog in the building for a partially sighted colleague. His name is Rufus and is by far the most popular person in the building, the dog, not the human. And they may not get along with a cat. He responded by telling me that it was illegal to discriminate by favoring one disability over another, and if a blind person could have a guide dog, a depressed person could have a cat. I moved on from this, clearly idiotic, point and asked how a cat would react to being placed in a pet carrier twice a day to travel to and from work. He advised me he would train the cat. My boss became very agitated at this point, demanding, "How the hell do you train a cat?" Not to be deterred, my colleague stated that in the worst case scenario he would leave the cat at work overnight and only take him home on weekends. I asked how he intended to cope with litter tray cleaning, etc. Given his serious weight issues, bending down to empty a litter tray would be difficult for him. He presented me with a spreadsheet he had created with a team rota for cleaning up after the cat and feeding. He had also cost out food, insurance, and the actual cost of the cat on said spreadsheet had an expected donation from each team member, on a sliding scale depending on how he perceived their financial circumstances to be. I was paying the most as I am single, earn more and have no dependent children. The spreadsheet was quite impressive, color-coded and everything. I politely said no to that, and he then started insisting the company should pay as it would be a legitimate business expense to accommodate his disabilities. At this point I realized my boss was still repeating, "How the hell do you train a cat?" And the support worker was shaking his head and muttering, "I told you not to do this." So I made a unilateral decision on behalf of my company and advised him in no certain terms that we would not be buying any cats, we would not be cleaning up after any cats, because we would not be permitting him to bring any cats onto the premises. He was not happy. He complained that I was making it impossible for him to return to work. My boss took a break from his cat training mantra to say that we had perhaps gone as far as we could for the time being and we should end the meeting at this point. As we were leaving, he did make a point of telling the support worker, "There will be no bloody cats." The support worker nodded and agreed this was entirely fair. I didn't hear anything from him for a week or so, then I received another 4-week sick note from him, so I called, as per our company procedure, to check in and see how he was doing. He was still very unhappy about my discriminatory anti-cat stance and advised he would be taking it further. 2 weeks later I received a letter from what initially looked like a local solicitor's office. It advised me I was being sued for breaking disability discrimination laws. The letter itself was filled with bizarre, mainly, American legalese that seemed to be culled from Law and Order episodes. On closer examination, the letterhead had been edited to change the contact details to his home phone number and personal mobile. I'm not sure whose address he used, but it wasn't the solicitor's in question. I handed it to my boss, who had also received one, so both were forwarded to our legal department. I was advised to have no further contact with him. The legal bodies have informed me that his contract has been terminated with immediate effect. I am honestly stunned as to how it turned out. I half expected him to be terminated due to the amount of time off sick and his unwillingness to address his performance issues, but I would never have guessed it would end like this. It is both funny and sad. Thank you so much to everyone who took the time to calm my nerves before the meeting. It really did mean the world to me. TLDR. Meeting started fine, took a weird turn and went downhill from there. Now to the next story, story 3. My fiancée cheated and said I'd never find someone like her. A year later, I'm dating a model who had a crush on me since high school. So, when going around Reddit the other day, I came across this post about a guy whose girlfriend was cheating on him and didn't care. She was absolutely honest about it, as if it were no big deal. It was insane, and it made me think about my ex-girlfriend. I haven't told many people about this incident, mostly because it's long and, well, it was unpleasant at the time. But after reading that post, I thought, what the heck, I might as well give it a chance. Keep in mind that this occurred approximately 2 years ago. I met my ex, let's call her Chloe, through a dating app. It wasn't one of those applications seeking a quick hookup. It was one of the more serious ones, with people reportedly hoping for a relationship. Anyway, at the time, I was 33 and she was 30. We matched, chatted, and there was an instant connection. It's difficult to explain, but we just understood each other. We shared the same sense of humor, interests, and could talk for hours without becoming bored. It was very refreshing. After a few weeks of online and phone conversations, I eventually invited her out on an actual date. I was a little nervous, to be honest, because she was so lovely. I mean, breathtakingly stunning. I am not suggesting I am a troll or anything. I think I'm a decent-looking guy, but she was clearly in a different league. I remember thinking at the time that I probably wouldn't be looking for anything serious with her because, girls like that usually have a lot of options. I did not want to have my heart broken. Being with someone who is overly attractive is a strange problem, I know, but it can provide its own set of challenges. Anyway, she agreed to the date, and we had a great time. It just validated everything I felt during our internet conversations. We started seeing each other more frequently after that, and it became formal very quickly. One thing that was continually on my mind was how much attention she received from other men. She would tell me about it occasionally, even when we were together. A guy would shamelessly hit on her in front of me, or she'd receive messages from guys via social media. At first, I wasn't concerned by it. I trusted her. I got the impression that she wasn't interested in anyone else and was truly interested in me. Stupid, I know, but that's how I felt at the moment. I was simply enjoying being with her, and I didn't want to be the jealous, insecure lover. Things were going great, really great, except for one tiny item that kept lingering in my mind. We were having one of those crazy late-night chats where you speak about random things, and the subject of hall passes came up. If you're not familiar with the term, it refers to a hypothetical situation in which you and your partner each got to choose one celebrity with whom you would be allowed to sleep, no questions asked. It's meant to be a jest, a bit of fun, but it can occasionally expose some underlying sentiments. Anyway, she brought it up, which struck me as weird. Usually, I'm the one who initiates such silly chats. She said her hall pass was Justin Timberlake, which is fair enough. He's a nice-looking guy. But then she said something that really resonated with me. She added, "I don't think there are many celebrities who would say no to me," with a slight smirk, as if she was entirely serious. Now, I knew she was beautiful, I had always known that, but hearing her say it in that way simply rubbed me wrong. She seemed to be accepting that she could have pretty much any guy she wanted, which made me uneasy. It seemed out of character for her too. Despite her outward appearance, she had always been quite approachable. It just felt arrogant. It made me feel uneasy. I said nothing at the moment. I just laughed it off and we went on to the next issue. But the comment persisted in the back of my mind. I kept thinking about it throughout the next few days. The feeling vanished, and things returned to normal, but I never forgot about it. The shift in her behavior, things were going really well for a while after the hall pass chat, but then I noticed a shift in her behavior. It was faint at first, but as time passed, it grew increasingly clear. She began arriving home later than usual. Normally, she'd arrive home from work about 6 p.m., but she began arriving at 7 p.m., maybe 7:30, or even later. And what were the arguments she gave? They were basically lame excuses. She'd say things like, "Oh, I just lost track of time," or, "I ran into a friend and we chatted for a bit." It was strange because she used to be so thorough about her day. If she was late due to work, she'd tell me everything, what project she was working on, who she spoke with, and so on. Now, it was simply these vague, meaningless reasons. On top of that, she became quite irritable. If I inquired why she was late, she would snap at me. She'd become defensive, claiming I was being overly controlling or that I didn't trust her. I didn't want to fight, so I usually backed away. I am not a confrontational person, especially when someone is already in a foul attitude. However, the late nights persisted, as did the nebulous reasons. My suspicion began to deepen. It was like a small voice in the back of my head saying, "Something's not right here." I tried to ignore it, but it became increasingly difficult. Confrontations and denials. Finally, I asked her if there was anything wrong. I said, "Is everything okay? You seem different lately?" She denied it, of course. She responded, "No, everything's fine. I'm just stressed with work." The usual. I wanted to believe her. I actually did. A few days passed, and the same things happened. I couldn't keep it in anymore. I informed her again that her behavior was unusual and that I was concerned. This time, she appeared to understand what I was saying. In reality, she apologized, claiming that it was all due to stress and exhaustion and insisting that it was nothing personal. I got what she was saying. But I couldn't get myself to believe it. The fake explanations after that chat, things appeared to improve, at least on the surface. She was more receptive and conversational. When she got home late, she'd tell me stories about what she'd been doing. But they simply felt hollow. There was something about the way she told them, the lack of information, the avoidance of eye contact, that didn't feel right. I remember one particular night. She arrived home late and told me a story about running into an old coworker and having drinks with him. And I knew she was lying. It was like a light bulb went out in my head. I can't describe it, but I received the overpowering impression that she was hiding something really important. And that's when the thought occurred to me. She was having an affair. It wasn't just a minor issue or misunderstanding. This was a full-blown affair. I knew I couldn't simply let it go. I couldn't pretend everything was fine. I needed to discover the truth, one way or another. Her conduct had shifted dramatically from the woman I first met. It was impossible to ignore. This was not the person I had fell for before. Something was clearly wrong, and I was determined to find out what it was. The plan. Okay, I'm sitting there, convinced that my girlfriend is cheating on me. My initial thought was, I need to check her phone. I mean, that's where all the proof should be, right? Text messages, emails, social media, everything. But I quickly knew it wouldn't work. First and foremost, she was always on her phone, making it very impossible to take it away long enough to conduct a thorough search. Even if I did comprehend it, I'm not exactly a tech expert. I wouldn't know where or what to look for, and she'd probably removed anything damning anyhow. Plus, I needed proof. I didn't want to locate a questionable text message and then confront her with it. I wanted to catch her in the act, to know without a doubt. So I decided to take a different way. Hire a private investigator. Yeah, I understand. It seems like something out of a film, but I was desperate. I needed the truth. And I wanted someone who knew what they were doing to guide me to it. I wanted to know who this guy was and where they were meeting. I conducted a Google search for private investigators in my area and discovered one with positive reviews. I contacted them up and scheduled a meeting. I remember being quite scared when I walked into their office. It seemed like I was accepting defeat. I sat down with the investigator, a guy who appeared to have seen it all before, and told him everything. I recounted the entire event, from the hallway conversation to the late nights and lame explanations. It took a while, but he just listened calmly and nodded. He made no judgments about me. He did not make me feel foolish. He was just listening. Then he stated he'd seen this type of thing 100 times before. He preferred to do surveillance for 2 weeks because her late nights were variable, but this would be somewhat costly. We ultimately agreed on 10 days. I gave him all of her contact information, including her phone number, email address, and where she worked. Before I departed, he told me not to contact him until the 10 days were up, unless it was an emergency. It'll be difficult, he told me. But you need to let me do my job. I agreed. I knew it would be torment, but I had to believe him. The longest 10 days of my life. These 10 days were among the longest of my life. It was awful to know that this investigator was following my fiancée and could unearth proof that confirmed my darkest concerns. I felt helpless, just waiting, wondering, and thinking all kinds of possibilities. It was difficult to focus on anything else. Work was a nightmare. I could not sleep. I barely ate. And the worst part? Throughout the 10 days, she consistently arrived home late. 3 times, she arrived home after 9 p.m., using the same tired, pathetic justifications. Oh, I had last-minute plans with some friends. Traffic was terrible. She had no idea that every time she said those things, it further confirmed my suspicions that she was lying. Each time she was late, I thought, okay, this is it? This is when the investigator will catch her. It simply offered him more opportunities to get the evidence I required. The truth comes out. Finally, the 10-day period ended. The investigator phoned me precisely on time. He didn't say much over the phone, just that he had the information I needed and asked if we could meet in person. I answered, yes, absolutely. This was something I needed to hear face to face. I couldn't bear hearing this kind of news over the phone. I had been waiting for what seemed like an eternity, and I needed to see his expression to know for certain that what he was telling me was true. I drove to his office, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. I felt terrible to my stomach. When I stepped in, he was sitting with a manila envelope on the desk in front of him. He motioned for me to sit down. Then he asked if I wanted him to simply explain what he discovered or if I wanted to examine the contents of the package myself. I said I wanted to hear it from him first. I thought it would soften the blow a little. In my brain, I compared it to walking in on your partner cheating and having a moment to brace yourself before the gut punch. He took a big breath and replied, "Your suspicions were correct." Just like that. There's no avoiding the issue. There's no sugarcoating it. He informed me that he had followed her to an apartment building 3 times. She went in alone and left about 2 hours later, always with the same man. He had obtained the apartment number and the individual's name. Cody. Obviously, I'm changing the name. To be honest, my initial thought was that I wanted to find this Cody person, and let's just say I was not thinking peacefully. But then I realized this wasn't the point. The point was that my girlfriend, the lady I adored, had deceived me. That's what I needed to concentrate on. The investigator slid the envelope across the desk. I opened it. And there they were. Pictures. Photos of her and this Cody guy in front of the apartment building. Embracing, holding hands, kissing, in front of her car. Everything was there, in black and white. Unquestionable proof. I almost lost my mind. I almost broke down right there in his office. It was one thing to suspect something, to have a gut instinct. But seeing it with my own eyes was a very different experience. The visual evidence was very overwhelming. I managed to keep back tears, although it was difficult. It wasn't just the affair, it was the realization that my entire life, the future I had planned with her, was falling in front of me. The confrontation, I wasn't sure what to do next, but I knew I had to get to the bottom of this. I was about to confront her. When I arrived home, I asked her to sit down. I did not yell. I didn't create a scene. I said quietly, "We need to talk." She was aware that something was off. She saw it on my face. She sat down, and I simply lay everything out. I informed her I knew about the affair. I told her I'd hired a private investigator. I informed her that I had proof. Her first emotion was shock. She simply stared at me, her mouth slightly wide. Then she attempted to calm down, to act as if nothing had happened. But I wouldn't have it. I told her what the investigator told me. About the residential building. About Cody. Everything. And she simply sat there. Silent. She did not refute it. She did not apologize. She did not even attempt to explain. She just sat there listening. The more I talked, the angrier I became. Her silence was infuriating. She didn't seem to care, or to be sorry for what she'd done. Finally, I could not take it any longer. I told her I wanted to break up. I responded, "I can't do this anymore. I can't keep playing this song and dance. I'm done." And then, she did something very unexpected. She laughed. She stepped up as if to frighten me and began this full monologue. "You want to leave me?" she inquired. "Are you kidding? So what?" I had a little bit of excitement on the side. It was just physical. It didn't mean anything. I'm a cheater. Fair. But where do you think you'll go from here? Do you think you'll ever get someone like me again? Hasn't it been clear to you over the years that I'm out of your league? It was one time. Is that what you want to destroy our lives over? She spoke a lot more in that vein, essentially attempting to make me feel lucky. That I should simply be grateful to be with her, even if she cheated. Can you believe it? I was stunned. I knew she was arrogant. I knew she thought well of herself. However, this was a whole new level. This was not a sincere apology. This was hardly the reaction of someone who had been caught and wanted to make amends. This was the response of someone who didn't give a damn. Someone having a genuine F-it attitude. A true crash-out mentality. It seemed as if her ideal scenario was for me to simply accept that she was too good for me, that she would do whatever she pleased, and that I should be content to be along for the trip. She honestly believed I wouldn't have the courage to leave. That's how proud she was of herself. Her comment struck me like a ton of bricks. I'd felt wounded and outraged before, but this was different. This was pure fury. I'd never felt anything like it. I stood up, looked her directly in the eyes, and told her how much I detested her. I don't remember the precise words, but they were along those lines. And then I walked out. I didn't bring a bag. I did not say farewell. I simply stepped out the door. I couldn't bear to be in the same room as her for another second. I felt completely betrayed. It was over. The aftermath, I ended up staying the night in a cheap motel. I couldn't return to the house, not yet. I just needed to be alone and contemplate all that had transpired. I laid there in that uncomfortable bed, staring at the ceiling, rehearsing the confrontation in my mind over and over. I couldn't believe the way she reacted. It was simply unbelievable. The next day, I returned to the house to get some of my belongings. I assumed she would be at work. But she was present. She appeared to have been crying, but she was attempting to play tough, as if nothing was wrong. And then, get this. She had the nerve to reply, "I knew you'd be back," with a smug little grin on her face. As if I had just thrown a small tantrum and crawled back to her. I didn't say anything. I just went inside and grabbed some clothes, toiletries, and other necessities. I knew I couldn't acquire everything at once, but all I wanted was to get out of there as soon as possible. I replied, "I'll be back for the rest of my stuff later." She just stood there staring at me, her face filled with disbelief. As if she couldn't believe I was leaving. She said nothing till I was walking out the door. Then she merely whispered something under her breath, which I didn't catch. And frankly, I didn't mind. I've been trying to understand why she acted the way she did. I'm still having trouble wrapping my head around it. Perhaps she was looking for validation or excitement outside of our relationship. Perhaps she was insecure about becoming older or about our routine. Perhaps she regarded me as a safe, dependable, cuddly husband, but also as someone who she considered beneath her. And perhaps because she had always felt that way, she did not consider the infidelity to be a huge problem. She'd already rationalized it in her mind. Of course, all of this is just me guessing, attempting to make sense of something that does not make sense. The aftermath. After I departed, she began contacting me. The first few messages were mocking and caustic, as if she thought the whole thing was a joke and that I would just run back to her. She definitely believed I was lying. That I would not go through with leaving, but, a few days later, I returned to the house with a friend to retrieve the remainder of my possessions. And she was shocked. She could not believe I was being serious. I believe it was the moment she realized it was truly over. One of her final texts to me read, "I hope you know you'll never find anyone like me again." Seriously? I blocked her after that. I couldn't take it anymore. It was simply too much. Moving on. Okay, let's skip ahead a bit. The whole breakup with Chloe was a shambles, and it took me a bit to get my bearings. But life continues, right? A few months later, I had my 15-year high school reunion. I wasn't sure whether I wanted to go, but a number of my friends persuaded me. It ended up being a great time. It was nice to see all the old faces and meet up with people I hadn't seen in years. Just a really upbeat, enjoyable vibe. And then, there was Veronica. Enter Veronica. Veronica attended my high school class. She was a tall, stunningly beautiful girl. We were cordial and took some classes together, but we were not particularly close. She was one of those girls who was just naturally cool, you know? After high school, she became a model, and a rather successful one at that. I had seen her in some magazines and internet advertisements. If you're into fashion, you may recognize her name. I hadn't spoken to her in at least 7 years, possibly more. So I'm at the reunion, having a nice time, when I realize that Veronica isn't present. However, her best friend from high school was. They were still really close, which I thought was fantastic. It demonstrated that Veronica had not changed much despite her success. I went over to see her friend just to say hello and catch up. We were talking, and she kept a wide smile on her face the entire time. When I named Veronica, her smile grew even wider. She made a face and continued. "I know she's going to kill me for telling you this, but, you know she's always had a crush on you?" I just chuckled. I mean, come on. Veronica, a successful model, have a crush on me? It appeared utterly ludicrous. Even in high school, we didn't run in the same circles. We were friendly, but not more. There was no way. Also, becoming a model now? There's no chance. It was flattering, of course, to think that someone like her would find me beautiful. But I assumed that was just a high school event that she'd long forgotten about. I told her buddy that I didn't think Veronica remembered me, but she insisted. She explained that Veronica had requested her to check me out at the reunion to see if I still looked as nice as I did in high school. And then she continued. "She's still into you, so if you're single and you're not scared of girls with baggage, you might as well give it a shot." I spent the remainder of the night reflecting on the talk. It was all so unexpected. I won't lie, it felt wonderful to know that someone like Veronica was interested in me, especially after what had occurred with Chloe. It felt as if here was this woman who my ex would have deemed out of my league, and she was allegedly crushing on me. It made me understand how useless Chloe's remarks were, and how much she wanted to bring me down. It provided a significant confidence boost. Taking a chance. Following the reconnection, I decided to take a chance. I figured, what could I lose? I decided to contact Veronica online, as the kids say. I found her on Instagram and messaged her. I also informed Veronica's friend that I was going to message her in case she did not check her direct messages from people she did not follow. I did not want my message to be lost in the mix. And then I waited. And waited. And waited. I waited 5 days and heard nothing. I'd completely forgotten about it, to be honest. I believed she was probably busy, or that her buddy had exaggerated things. I wasn't too concerned about it. But, ultimately, she replied. And her message was quite enthusiastic. She wrote, "Oh my gosh, Keith, it's been so long. Now, I've heard that the more letters a woman repeats in her text to you, the more she likes you. I'm not sure if it is accurate, but it felt like a good sign." We began messaging back and forth, catching up on pretty much everything. We spoke about high school. About what we have been up to since then. About our jobs. Our families. Everything. After a few days, Veronica recommended we switch to FaceTime. She claimed she was tired of typing so much. I was delighted, of course, and we began making video chats virtually every day. A deeper connection. During those video talks, I began to understand more about her life as a model. She told me everything about the industry, the travel, the photo shoots, the ups and downs. She was in Brussels at the time, working on a campaign, and even gave me some photos from the set. That was fascinating. And it was awesome to watch her in her environment. It also allowed us to connect on a deeper level while being thousands of miles apart. After a few weeks of almost daily communication, it began to seem like we were dating. We hadn't formally called it that, but it seemed like more than simply friendship. So, I decided to be a little corny and simply ask her, "What are we?" She chuckled and said we were really wonderful friends, but she wanted to be more. I saw this as a cue to ask her if she wanted to be my girlfriend. She quickly agreed, with no hesitation. It was a wonderful feeling. The long distance challenge. Obviously, the long distance aspect was challenging. She was a model traveling the world, while I was here doing my regular work. I had a long distance relationship when I was younger, and I despised it. It was difficult to maintain that connection, to feel like you were truly a part of each other's lives. But this was different. This was Veronica, and she was already so important to me that I was willing to go to any length to make it work. So I booked a flight to Brussels to see her. She was going to be there for a few weeks working on a project, so I decided it was the perfect time to see her and get a taste of her culture. The trip that changed everything. The trip was just stunning. Brussels was beautiful, of course, but being there with Veronica was incredible. It seemed like a dream come true. It taught me that I shouldn't give up on love because of a single negative experience, that there were still excellent people out there, people worth the effort. She even brought me to one of her photo shoots. I got to watch her work, see her in her element, cheer her on from the sidelines, and take some of my own photos. It was so great to watch her doing what she loved, and it made me feel even more connected to her, as if I were truly a part of her life. The Instagram mishap. So I was in Brussels, having the time of my life with Veronica. I took a lot of photos during the photo shoot and decided to share a few of them on Instagram. I didn't upload them to my main feed, though. Instead, I shared them on my close friends story, expecting just a limited group of individuals to view them. Here's the thing. I completely forgot about my ex, Chloe, who was still on my close friends list. I rarely use Instagram, so I didn't think to block her there. I had blocked her everywhere else, but not Instagram. A big mistake. I received a message from her just a few hours after posting the photos. Remember, we hadn't spoken in almost a year by this point. The message stated, "Who's that? Why are you playing groupie?" A laughing emoji appears next. I quietly responded, "That's my girlfriend." I said nothing else. She did not respond right away. I could see the little typing sign emerge and disappear several times over the following 10 minutes, as if she was writing something, deleting it, and then writing something new. Finally, she only sent a snarky message. Sure. The final goodbye. That's when I decided to try it. I informed her that she didn't have to trust me. Then I said, "If you thought you were out of my league, then Veronica is out of this world." I also questioned her. "How's your man from back then doing?" I knew it would sting. She read the message, but did not respond. And then I blocked her on Instagram. I realize it was probably petty of me to say those things. But really? I believed she earned it. And I did not want her to have any further access to my life. Any more opportunities to get under my skin? Even yet, I'll admit that I was curious about her reaction. I'll admit it. Happy ever after? And that, my friends, concludes the story. It's been an exciting voyage, to say the least. But I can honestly tell that I am happier than I have ever been. Veronica and I have been dating happily ever since our vacation to Brussels. And I won't lie, I'm thinking about proposing before the end of the year. Don't tell her, however. Veronica is a true blessing in my life. She is kind, she's funny, she is intelligent, she's stunning, both inside and out. And she makes me feel like the luckiest man in the world. I am really relieved that things did not work out with Chloe, because if they had, I would not have met Veronica. I understand that some people may criticize me. Could respond, "Oh, he's just with her because she's a model." Thus, long distance never works. But I don't care. I refuse to let anyone's criticism spoil my relationship with Veronica. She is great, and I'm quite thrilled. If things don't work out, you may come back here and tell me I told you so. But God knows, I don't see me penning another piece here. So, that's it. That is my story. It's a story of treachery, heartbreak, and eventually finding love and happiness in the most unexpected places. Thank you for listening. Reading, I suppose. Now, on to the next story, Story 4. My grandpa saved $50,000 for my education, but my parents spent it on my sister's sweet 16 and a luxury trip. I, 25F, have been working at an architecture business for the past 2 years, and I need to discuss something that has been eating me alive. Familial favoritism. Not just slight biases, but overt, obvious favoritism that has influenced my entire life. Let me clarify. My parents treat my younger sister, Sophia, 18F, as if she is the center of the universe, while I might as well be invisible. Have you seen the memes about the golden child versus the scapegoat? That's my life, detailed in agonizing detail. Growing up, every birthday became a reminder of this reality. On my 16th birthday, I received a used laptop that could only run basic applications. Sophia's Sweet 16 celebration included a full venue rental, a live band, and even a professional photographer. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning. I've always been drawn to architecture. Even as a child, I would spend hours with my construction blocks, constructing complicated structures as my parents admired Sophia's bizarre dancing movements in the living room. "Look how naturally talented she is," they'd exclaim, while my meticulously crafted structures were tossed aside without a glance. This pattern persisted through our lives. When I was in college, I took first prize in a major architectural design competition. It was a breakthrough moment in my career, the kind of triumph that leads to new opportunities. I alerted my parents about the awards event several weeks in advance, believing that this time would be different. My mother casually stated to me the morning before the ceremony that they would be unable to attend. "We have errands to run," she added, barely looking up from her phone, which was probably showing Sophia's most recent Instagram photos. I ended up asking my friend's mother to snap photos, holding back tears as I got my prize in front of a crowd of ecstatic parents. Sophia signed up for a high school dancing competition 3 months later. My parents were overjoyed when she came in second place, not first. They gave her flowers, took her out to a lavish supper, and documented everything on every social media outlet they could find. "Our talented daughter is following her dreams," they wrote. I sat at that supper, pushing food around my plate, wondering why her dreams were so much more valuable than mine. The instances are numerous. When my outdated phone eventually died, it was so old that the screen would randomly go black. I had to work additional shifts at my part-time job to save enough money for a replacement. Sophia expressed wanting the latest iPhone, and they got it for her that weekend. "She needs it for her social media presence," my mother said, as if that justified everything. But the true difference was in how they handled our mistakes. I once forgot to take out the garbage after working all night on a project. My father lectured me for 45 minutes about responsibility and how I needed to grow up and contribute to the home. But what happened when Sophia backed into our mailbox before she even had her license? They laughed it off. "Oh, everyone makes mistakes when they're learning." It cost $300 to replace the mailbox. My grandfather was not like others. He was my light of hope in this sea of favoritism. While my parents were preoccupied with Sophia's latest social media follower count, Grandpa would sit with me in his study and review my architectural sketches. He wasn't very knowledgeable about modern design ideas, but he understood passion. "One day," he said, his eyes gleaming, "I'll see your buildings on postcards, and I'll buy every single one of them." As I grew older, I spent more time at my grandparents' house. It was the only location where I could breathe freely and not have my accomplishments eclipsed by whatever Sophia had done that day. Grandma would bake cookies while Grandpa worked on my college applications. They were the first to actually notice me. When I was 22 and working my first job at an architecture firm, Grandpa summoned me for a serious chat. He brought me down in his study, the same space where he'd fostered my goals for years, and informed me that he was launching a college fund for my graduate education. He was painfully honest. "I know your parents won't prioritize this, sweetie. They have their favorites, and it's not fair. But I want you to have your shot." The money was large, totaling $55,000. It was enough to give me a legitimate opportunity to pursue my master's degree without drowning in debt. When my parents found out, they barely responded. "What about Sophia? She had an amazing tantrum. Why doesn't Grandpa love me as much?" she cried. My parents spent hours comforting her, assuring her she was just as important and adored. Meanwhile, I stood in the corner, convinced that I couldn't have this one item without it becoming about her. Working for an architecture firm has been my escape. I've pushed myself into my tasks, working late at the workplace and taking on extra responsibilities. My colleagues value my effort and attention to detail. Last month, I was even able to present one of my ideas to a significant client. The firm's partners were impressed. But when I sought to share this information with my parents, "That's nice, honey, but did you hear about Sophia's TikTok going viral?" Then everything changed. My grandparents died within months of one another. First Grandpa, then Grandma, as if they couldn't take being apart. Losing them devastated me. They were my support system, my cheerleaders, and the only people who treated me like I was important. In the midst of my sadness, I had to manage the duties they had left behind. They were highly structured, with everything clearly spelled out in their will. They left me their humble home, filled with memories and love. Then there was the college fund, Grandpa's pride and delight. I had not touched it yet, thanks to my work savings. But as graduate school applications approached, I decided to check the account. Late one night, after a particularly hard day at work, I went in to check the balance. The numbers on the screen caused my heart to stop. Instead of $55,000, there was just $5,000 remaining. I blinked. We refreshed the page, logged out and back in. The number did not change. The next morning, I went to the bank in person, trying to remain calm while I inquired about the transaction history. That's when the truth was revealed. My parents, named as secondary beneficiaries, had been steadily depleting the account for the past year. I called my mother that evening, my hands shaking as I gripped the phone. "Hey, I was checking Grandpa's college fund, and most of the money's gone. Do you know what happened?" There was a long delay before she spoke, her tone immediately defensive. "What do you mean it's gone? Are you sure you're looking at the right account?" When I told her I'd been to the bank and knew the money had been withdrawn, she abandoned the act. "We used it for Sophia's Sweet 16, she explained, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. I felt like I had been hit in the stomach. "You spent $50,000 on a birthday party?" "It wasn't just the party," she said, as if that made things better. "There were a lot of expenses, the venue, the catering, the decorations. Plus, we got her a car." Then came the kicker. They had also used the money to take Sophia on a 2-week family trip to Europe. I wasn't even told about the family vacation, let alone invited. When I explained that the money was intended for my education, my mother sighed, as if I was being difficult. "You didn't need that money anymore. You have a job, remember? Sweet 16 only happens once." We wanted to make it special for her. I hung up the phone with my entire body numb. That night, I sat in the living room of the house my grandparents had left for me, surrounded by images and memories. It seemed like a betrayal of all they had worked for and believed in. After days of internal deliberation, I came to a decision. I hired an attorney. This is not about money anymore. It's about respect. About advocating for myself. Regarding respecting my grandparents' desires. When my parents received the documents, all hell broke out. My mother called within hours, shouting about how I was ripping the family apart. "Do you know how this makes us look?" she insisted. My reply was straightforward. "You should have thought about that before stealing $50,000. "It wasn't stealing," she exclaimed. "It was for the family." I advised her to contact my lawyer and hung up. The fallout was immediate. My extended family found out, of course, my mother couldn't keep it a secret, and I became public enemy number one. My aunt called to lecture me on family loyalty. My aunt told me, "You need to think about what you're doing to your mother." But I'm done thinking about everybody else. For once in my life, I'm thinking about myself. My lawyer thinks this will not be a simple process, but I am ready. My grandparents believed in me. I believed in my dreams. I refuse to let their final gift to me be spent on a Sweet 16 celebration and a car Sophia has probably already wrecked. I will keep you updated as things progress. If anyone has dealt with toxic family dynamics like this, I'd love to learn how they addressed it. Sometimes I question whether I'm doing the right thing. But then I remember my grandfather's expression when he told me about the college fund, and how delighted he was to be able to help me pursue my aspirations. I will not let them take it away. Update 1. Hi, Reddit. First and foremost, I'd like to express my gratitude for your responses to my last post. Some of you really helped me realize that sticking up for myself wasn't just okay, it was important. Here's what's transpired in the 2 months since I filed legal action. The legal proceedings have been exhausting. My parents first tried to drag things out by ignoring our letters and missed deadlines. Their initial answer, through their lawyer, was almost comical. They stated that the money was a family resource and that Grandpa had vocally changed his mind before dying. When we inquired for documentation of this alleged amendment, they couldn't recall exactly when or where the conversation took place. During our first mediation session, my parents took a different approach. Dad stated they had invested the money in my future, claiming Sophia's social media presence would someday benefit the entire family. He genuinely said, with a straight face, "She's going to be an influencer, and then she can help pay for your education." The mediator's look was priceless. The real shock occurred when we uncovered more withdrawals that they had not communicated. In addition to the Sweet 16 celebration, the car, and the European holiday, they had spent thousands of dollars on a private dance instructor to help Sophia advance her career. They'd paid for a costly social media marketing course, many professional photo sessions for her Instagram, and a full gaming setup for her aspiring streaming career. My lawyer was ecstatic with these discoveries. Apparently, tracking such needless expenses strengthens our case. When confronted with these expenses, my mother attempted to justify them as investments in Sophia's future. She even brought spreadsheets to our next meeting, hoping to demonstrate how an influencer career could provide a significant family income. The judge was unimpressed, especially when my lawyer showed out that Sophia's social media following was primarily acquired through paid marketing, using more of my college fund money. The family dynamic has shifted. Most families initially supported my parents. However, as more information became available, some people began to shift their perspective. My cousin Julia, 32F, called me privately and said she'd seen similar partiality at family gatherings for years but never had the nerve to speak up. She's now one of my most ardent advocates, willing to testify about particular occurrences she's witnessed over the years. My Aunt Margaret, who had first lectured me on family loyalty, became strangely silent after seeing the bank statements. Mom had brought them to a family meeting with the intention of getting approval for their side of the tale, but it backfired catastrophically. The statements included not only the significant expenses, but also dozens of minor withdrawals for things like social media consultancy and brand building seminars. Last week, Margaret sent me a quick text. "Your grandpa would be proud of you standing up for yourself." Coming from her, it meant everything. Sophia's behavior has undergone the most dramatic changes. When she realized her automobile could be seized as part of the settlement, she launched a massive social media campaign against me. Her heartfelt claims about her nasty sister and how I was wrecking the family out of envy backfired swiftly. Her followers began to question her perspective, especially after she moaned about possibly losing her European summer holiday plans. Many of them had part-time jobs to pay for their textbooks. Her most recent outburst occurred when she realized she might need to obtain a job. She posted a 20-minute diatribe on how unfair it was that she might have to work in retail or food service like any other person. The comment section rapidly turned against her, with many pointing out how out of touch she seemed. She's losing followers on a regular basis, and her attempts to present herself as the victim have just exacerbated the situation. The actual wake-up call for her came last week, when she received her college admission letter. Instead of the customary festivities, there was panic throughout the house. My parents committed to pay for her entire education, but they are currently suffering major financial difficulties. Their savings have been exhausted due to legal bills and a potential settlement. Sophia's dream school is suddenly less guaranteed, and for the first time, she is confronted with the implications of their collective decisions. Meanwhile, my career has become my haven. My firm's partners have been really helpful, particularly after I informed them that I may want some flexibility for court dates. One of them approached me and related her own story of family financial abuse. She has become something of a mentor to me, guiding me through both professional and personal obstacles. Last month, she even assigned me to oversee a key project, indicating that she believes in my talents despite my ongoing personal troubles. The most reassuring event occurred during a heated phone conversation with my folks last week. My mother began her typical guilt trip about family loyalty, but this time, I found my voice. When she started talking about how families should help each other, I politely asked her, "Where was this concern for your family when you spent my education fund on Instagram photo shoots and social media courses?" The line became silent. Then she hung up. An hour later, my father called back with an entirely different tone. For the first time, he seemed dejected. "Their lawyer phoned mine yesterday, saying we might be able to reach an agreement." The judge's first remarks regarding their breach of fiduciary duty appear to have finally struck home, particularly when he referenced potential punitive damages. My folks are beginning to understand that this will not go away with a few sad phone calls or guilt trips. The entire experience has been transformational. Standing up to them was daunting at first, but each small success has made me stronger. I am no longer the silent daughter who absorbs whatever attention they decide to offer me. I'm a professional lady battling for what is rightfully mine. And I'm winning. Not just in court, but in real life. Watching Sophia deal with real-world consequences has been eye-opening. She had to cancel her summer travel plans, and there is real talk that she will attend community college rather than her ideal university. She stopped writing about me on social media once her fans began to doubt her viewpoint. Some of her acquaintances have even contacted me personally, saying that my stance against family financial exploitation has helped them think about their own family problems. One of them even called me inspirational. Imagine the scapegoat daughter becoming an inspiration. The most recent development occurred when my parents attempted one more manipulation effort. They arrived at my office unannounced, believing they could press me in person. They didn't anticipate my entire squad to rally around me. My mentor stepped in, politely but firmly, ushering them out and telling them that any communication should go through our lawyers. It was fantastic to see their power over me dissolve in real time. I'll provide an update once we've reached an agreement or if anything significant changes. Thank you all for your encouragement and wisdom. Thank you to everyone who shared their own experiences with standing up to toxic family members. You helped me find my voice when I needed it the most. My grandfather used to say, Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones most worth fighting. Update 2. After 6 months of intensive legal battles, I am finally able to reveal the outcome. For anyone curious about the outcome of the litigation, brace up, for karma has finally caught up with my family. The settlement negotiations were severe. My parents first claimed poverty, but their social media activities exposed them. Despite claiming financial distress, my mother continued to post about weekend spa getaways and fancy purchases. When my team submitted these posts to their lawyer during mediation, he visibly shuddered. Our forensic accountant made a surprising discovery, which marked a turning point. In addition to the expenses we already knew about, my parents had started depositing money into Sophia's social network investing account. They had recruited several influencer coaches and even put down a deposit on a content creation house, all using my college fund. The judge's response was noteworthy. This isn't investing in a child's future. This is gambling with someone else's inheritance. The final settlement exceeded our first expectations. My parents had to liquidate various assets, including their vacation timeshare and investment properties we had no idea existed. Sophia's car, the one they purchased with my money, had to be sold. What's with the irony? She had barely driven it and preferred to be ferried about by our parents. What about luxury shopping sprees and European vacations? Gone. She now works at a neighborhood coffee shop, which is her first actual job at the age of 18. The transformation has been astonishing. Initially, she returned home lamenting over having to wear a uniform and deal with tough customers. But something unexpected happened. She's genuinely maturing. She paid her first student loan payment last week and posted about it. There were no tears. There's no drama. Just a simple acknowledgement that she is learning to stand on her own 2 feet. My parents' changes have been even more dramatic. The illusion of a beautiful family life, which they had cultivated for years, has crumbled. My mother's social media accounts, which were formerly loaded with beautifully managed family images and uplifting words about unconditional love, have gone silent. Dad stopped making excuses for their actions and recently sent me an email, our first true conversation in months. In his email, he revealed something I never expected to hear. We failed you as parents. We got so caught up in making Sophia the star of our family that we forgot you were shining in your own way. He started having seen my name in an architectural magazine. I had recently won an award for an innovative ecological design project, and he stated he finally saw what my grandfather had always seen in me. My career provided the most rewarding growth opportunities. The sustainable design initiative that drew my father's interest has opened up great opportunities. 3 major corporations have approached me with job offers, and my current employer has reacted with a promotion and a significant raise. The partners even mentioned fast-tracking me for a junior partner position, which typically takes at least another 5 years. The compensation money has now arrived, and I have invested it just as my grandfather would have wished. I'll begin my master's degree in sustainable architecture next year, and I've set aside some money to establish a small scholarship for students in financial need. It feels good to transform this awful experience into something that can benefit others. Sophia and I had our first actual talk last week. She arrived at my house after her job at the coffee shop, still dressed in her uniform, looking fatigued but more sincere than I'd ever seen her. I get it now, she remarked. Why do you fight so hard? It wasn't about the money. It was about being seen. We are not best friends, and perhaps we never will be. However, we have reached a new understanding. The most difficult thing has been witnessing my parents endure the community's censure. Their social circle has dwindled significantly since the truth was out. Several family friends have discreetly contacted me, relaying similar accounts of observing their favoritism over the years but never saying anything. My Aunt Margaret has unexpectedly become an ally, checking in on me on a regular basis and even assisting me with my graduate school application. Looking back, this journey was much more than just reclaiming stolen funds. It's been about breaking free from destructive familial patterns and discovering my own value. The house my grandparents left me has become my sanctuary, complete with architectural sketches and future ideas. I've converted their old study into my design studio, with my drafting table set up precisely where Grandpa used to sit and encourage my dreams. Sometimes, while I'm working late at night on my designs, I sense their presence and know they'd be proud of the lady I've become. The most significant difference has been in how I perceive myself. I am no longer the family's scapegoat or invisible daughter. I'm a successful architect, a potential graduate student, and someone who has the bravery to advocate for what is right. Last week, I presented a large sustainable housing project before the municipal council. Watching those seasoned architects and developers lean forward in their seats, truly interested in my ideas, was an experience that no amount of family approval could match. The familial dynamic that previously smothered me no longer has any hold on me. My folks are embarking on their own journey of atonement. Mom has started treatment, which she previously regarded as unnecessary. Her therapist assisted her in seeing tendencies from her own past that contributed to her bias. Dad is striving to re-establish relationships with family members who have distanced themselves owing to his enabling conduct. During our last family reunion, he actually stood up to his sister when she tried to make excuses for their previous actions. They have a long way to go, but at least they are admitting their mistakes. Sophia's transformation continues to amaze me. She's been promoted to shift supervisor at the coffee shop and is attending community college. Her social media presence now reflects a very different person, one who is discovering the importance of hard effort and genuine accomplishment. She's even created a small study club to help other working students reconcile work and education. Last week, she thanked me. "You taught me that real respect isn't about being given everything," she told me. "It's about earning your own way." The entitled youngster who used to throw tantrums over Instagram likes has matured into someone who recognizes the worth of actual achievement. To the Reddit community, your support has been vital throughout this trip. Every comment, letter, and shared story gave me the strength I needed when I was doubting myself. The reactions to my initial post made me realize how many other people have had similar issues with family financial abuse. You taught me that standing up for yourself does not make you selfish or ungrateful. Rather, it makes you powerful. Special thanks to everyone who shared their own experiences with family financial abuse and toxic dynamics. Your courage impressed me. When my grandfather established the college fund, he wanted to invest in my future. Ultimately, he offered me something far more significant than money. He taught me that I was worth fighting for. He showed me that dreams are more than simply wishful thinking. They are objectives that should be pursued with everything you have. That lesson has been worth every difficult moment on this path. For anyone out there dealing with similar family situations, remember, you deserve to be recognized, acknowledged, and your dreams taken seriously. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise, even if they are family. Sometimes the most difficult battles are fought against people who should have been your staunch supporters. But those struggles shape who you are. The legal victory was only the beginning. I've begun helping other young architects at my business, particularly those dealing with financial or family issues. It feels natural to pass on the kind of support that my grandfather offered me. Next month, I'll be speaking at a professional conference on sustainable urban development, which I would never have done before. As I prepare to begin my master's program, I carry my grandfather's comments near to heart. One day, I'll see your buildings on postcards. I may have lost the money once, but I gained something far more valuable: the courage to shape my own destiny on my own terms. Every blueprint I draw, every design I develop, is a reflection of his faith in me. Thank you, Reddit, for being a part of my quest to reclaim what was properly mine. Not just money, but also my self-worth. Your intervention has transformed a story of familial betrayal into one of personal victory. I hope that my story can inspire others to have the strength to stand up for themselves and their aspirations. Now to the next story 5. My sister-in-law's DNA test was meant to expose me, but it ended up destroying her own marriage instead. I met my husband James, in our late 20s, and we soon fell in love. We married after 2 years of dating and have lived a wonderful, tranquil life ever since. Our friendship looked unshakable, based on trust and shared dreams. We celebrated the birth of our beautiful baby, Nathan. Now 5 years old, he brightens our days with laughter, love, and boundless enthusiasm. We felt like the perfect little family, and I believe nothing could separate us. That is, until Sarah, my sister-in-law, decided to put a wrench in everything. Sarah and I had never really gotten along. We had an underlying tension since James introduced us. I attempted to be friendly, but Sarah clearly had other plans. She accused me of trying to overshadow her by wearing a cream-colored dress to her wedding. This wasn't even my option. Sarah had specified that all of her bridesmaids wear cream. However, on her special day, it became about me taking the show. She launched a temper tantrum, turning what should have been a happy moment into an embarrassing one for everyone. From that moment on, it was a never-ending game of sarcastic remarks, backhanded compliments, and petty behavior. If I put on a new dress, Sarah would comment, "That's nice, but I liked it better when I saw it in the store last year." If Nathan reached a milestone, she would try to belittle it by comparing him to her own son, Tommy. It was exhausting, but James and I always chose the high path. We did not want family conflict to spoil our lives. Furthermore, we wanted Nathan and Tommy to grow up together, like siblings. However, things took a nasty turn this Christmas when Sarah sought to stir the pot in unexpected ways. For Christmas, she gave Nathan one of those DNA testing kits that everyone seems to be using nowadays. At first, I didn't think much about it. Nathan has always been interested in science and enjoys knowing about his family history. But something about Sarah's smug expression as she handed him the equipment didn't sit well with me. I had the impression that this present was more than just what it appeared to be. Later that evening, James grabbed me aside, his expression concerned. He claimed Sarah had made some unusual, almost cryptic remarks about eventually obtaining answers and how the truth always comes out. A shiver went down my spine. It wasn't hard to figure out what was going on. Nathan has green eyes, whereas James and I have brown ones. Of course, anyone with a basic understanding of genetics is aware that recessive features, such as green eyes, can pass down through generations. But Sarah had been making subtle, passive-aggressive statements for years, implying that James might not be Nathan's father. Sarah's present was a deliberate attempt to sow doubt in our marriage, causing James to question Nathan's parentage. I was infuriated. How dare she use something as innocent as a child's curiosity to play petty games? But James and I wouldn't let her win. We knew the truth. Our love and trust for each other were strong, and we weren't going to let Sarah's poisonous actions disrupt that foundation. We agreed to allow Nathan to take the test if he wanted to, knowing that the findings would only confirm what we already knew. Nathan is our son, and no test could change that. Nathan, utterly oblivious of the tension building beneath the surface, was enthusiastic about the science behind the DNA test. He was excited to learn about his ancestors and where they came from. So we assisted him in the procedure, and he mailed off the gear. Meanwhile, Sarah's son, Tommy, had been watching everything develop with great curiosity. Tommy, a curious 14-year-old, opted to take a DNA test as well. Sarah's husband, Todd, felt it would be a fun family activity, so they also ordered a kit for him. What began as harmless curiosity quickly turned into a family nightmare. Nathan's findings arrived a few weeks later, and as expected, everything was correct. James was his father, without a doubt. Then came the shock of a lifetime. Tommy's results revealed that Todd was not Tommy's biological father. The reality hit hard. Sarah had an affair over a decade ago, and Tommy was not Todd's child. The discovery shattered the family like a wrecking ball. Todd was devastated. He had reared Tommy as his own, never thinking Sarah was unfaithful. To make matters worse, Todd sought a paternity test for their 7-year-old daughter. The results confirmed his greatest fears. He wasn't her father either. Sarah's entire life, the immaculate picture she had fought so hard to maintain, was disintegrating right in front of her eyes. And this wasn't a quiet, secret disintegration. The entire family was aware, and the consequences were negative. Todd filed for divorce and left their home within a few days. Sarah's world fell, and the once smug lady who had attempted to destroy my family now stood in the ruins of her own. The irony of the situation could not be ignored. Sarah's attempt to pull apart my marriage had simply exposed her own lies. Tommy was struck the hardest. He transitioned from a carefree, joyful youngster to a confused and heartbroken young adult. The man he had always called dad was not his father, and his family was disintegrating. Nathan, too, was impacted. He and Tommy had always been close, and watching his cousin go through such upheaval made him sad and scared. He began questioning why Tommy's father was no longer around, and it hurt my heart to watch him so concerned about his cousin. Sarah's life became increasingly chaotic as time went. Todd pressed for full custody of their children, seeking to limit Sarah's role in their lives. Sarah, who had always been the glue that held the family together with her domineering personality, now appeared to be a shell of her former self. At family gatherings, she was a nervous wreck, her face pale and her eyes red from sobbing. The woman who had before attempted to make my life miserable now appeared completely defeated. Then, one day, something unexpected occurred. Sarah reached out to me. She called me, her voice unsteady and teary, pleading for assistance. She wanted me to talk to Todd and persuade him to lighten off on the custody agreement. She was anxious to salvage what little she had left of her relationship with her children, and she was seeking assistance from me. At first, I was stunned. After everything she had done to undermine my marriage and cause havoc at every opportunity, she had the arrogance to ask for my assistance. I initially ignored her calls, refusing to consider aiding her. But as the days passed, I found myself wondering about Tommy. He was the true victim in all of this. Despite the fact that none of this was his fault, he bore the brunt of it. Nathan, too, was trying to figure out why his cousin's life had been turned upside down. I started feeling conflicted. Was it appropriate to hold Sarah's conduct against her children? Should I put my rage aside and help for the benefit of the kids? James, of course, warned me to keep out of it. He insisted Sarah had made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. but I couldn't ignore the idea that I might be able to assist bring some serenity to the children involved. It was not their fault that their mother made poor decisions. So I found myself at a crossroads, unsure what to do. Should I assist Sarah, or should I let her face the consequences of her own actions? And now here I am, caught between doing what is right for the children and staying away from the woman who caused so much misery. What would you do if you were in my position? Update 1. Hello, everybody. Thank you for taking time to read my story. I did not expect such a large response, and your help has meant a lot to me during this tough time. It's been really difficult to navigate the emotional roller coaster I'm now experiencing, but knowing that there are others out there who understand and care has been quite beneficial. I wanted to provide an update on what has occurred since my previous post, and I hope it puts some light on the complex situation we are dealing with. Sarah is still contacting me regularly, and to be honest, it's getting tiring. I expected her to back off or cool down, but she hasn't. She is relentless. On one especially horrible day, she called me 3 times in a row, leaving lengthy, sobbing voicemails. I could sense the desperation in her voice, but after everything, it was difficult to feel sympathy. At one point, my husband James became so frustrated that he couldn't take it anymore. He called her himself. James rarely loses his cool, so when he phoned her, I knew he was serious. I could hear his wrath from across the room. He exploded, telling her he was fed up with her disrespecting me and attempting to manipulate our family. He made it apparent that this was more than simply a DNA test. It was about years of snarky remarks, manipulation, and her blatant disrespect for limits. Sarah did not take it well. She burst into tears on the phone, telling James that I had poisoned his mind against her, that I was the one who was keeping him away from his family. Hearing her sob like that made me conflicted. I felt a glimmer of sympathy, but basically, I was tired. After that chat, things became worse. Sarah's tone changed again. She began contacting me regularly, alternating between asking for help and accusing me of attempting to ruin her life. She was pleading for my aid at one point, claiming she wanted me to talk to Todd and help things go well. The next thing I knew, she was calling me manipulative, alleging I was jealous of her and her family, and that I wanted to end her marriage. It was as if she wasn't sure if I was her enemy or her rescuer. Honestly, coping with her emotional outbursts has been draining. I feel like I'm locked on a roller coaster that I didn't sign up for. Throughout all, my main focus has been the children. They are innocent in all of this, but they are the ones suffering the most. I can't quit thinking about Tommy and Nathan. Tommy's discovery about his biological father must have been traumatic for him, and it's evident that he's having difficulty processing it. It's difficult for me to see him suffer through this without being able to help. Nathan, on the other hand, isn't really sure what's going on, but he senses something wrong. We attended a family gathering a few days ago, and Nathan wanted to play with Tommy like they used to do. They used to be really close, almost inseparable. But when Tommy came over, I noticed an immediate shift in him. He was distant, reserved, and rarely engaged with Nathan. My heart bled as I saw the two boys, who had previously been like brothers, drift apart. Nathan continued asking why Tommy wasn't laughing or playing like he used to, but I didn't have the heart to tell him the truth. Instead, I made up reasons, telling him Tommy was simply sleepy or had a lot on his mind. But I knew it was more than that. Meanwhile, Sarah keeps sending me lengthy, dramatic texts. She wrote me a note yesterday, claiming she felt betrayed by our family. I really wanted to yell. How could she feel betrayed? She was the one who made these decisions. She was the one who caused the situation. And yet, she refuses to accept responsibility. It's always someone else's fault. Mine, James's, Todd's, never hers. James and I have had numerous late-night discussions on how to approach this. We both want to do what is best for the children, but we don't know what that is anymore. James says we should intervene and try to help Tommy, especially because he and Nathan are close. However, he is also concerned about the ramifications of being too involved in Sarah's situation. We've been trying to strike a balance between being supportive of the kids and maintaining our personal peace, but it's been more difficult than we expected. Todd has begun to contact James, further complicating matters. He's been trying to make sense of things and wants to discuss the problem. James hesitantly agreed to join him for coffee. When he returned, he appeared more conflicted than ever. Todd is naturally devastated. He told James that he believes his entire life has been a lie, and that he is now struggling to figure out how to co-parent with Sarah in light of everything that has occurred. Talking with Todd simply made James feel more torn. Todd is a kind guy who is only trying to do the best he can for his children despite the nightmare he has found himself in. After hearing Todd's side of the story, James is even more divided about how to proceed. He wants to help, but we both know that being too involved will drag us deeper into Sarah's drama. It's difficult to know what the appropriate thing to do. Every time I see Tommy, I have an intense want to help him. He's just a child caught up in this calamity, and he doesn't deserve any of it. Nathan continues asking why Tommy appears so sad all the time, and it aches my heart that I can't give him an honest reason. The more I think about it, the more split I am. Between wanting to intervene and being terrified of being drawn into Sarah's tumultuous world. At the end of the day, all I want to do is safeguard the children. Tommy and Nathan deserve more, and it's sad to see them suffer as a result of their parents' sins. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm hoping we can find a way to resolve this without causing further harm. I'll keep you posted on what happens next, and once again, thank you for your continuing support. Update 2. Hello folks. A lot has transpired in the last few days, so buckle up. It's been a lot for all of us, and I'm not sure how much longer this will continue. But this is where we are now. First and foremost, Sarah chose to proceed with an official medical paternity test. She was dissatisfied with the results of the at-home DNA kit, arguing it was not a reputable source for making such an important decision. To be fair, the at-home tests include a margin of error, and I'm guessing she was hanging on to whatever hope she had left. But, guess what? The findings did not change. The medical paternity test confirmed what the first one had revealed. Todd is not the father of Tommy or their daughter. Sarah just created a deeper hole for herself. I was not surprised by the conclusion, but there was no space for uncertainty. Todd, in particular, appeared to be preparing for the worst-case scenario. But when the medical test results came back, I could tell it still wounded him terribly. He appeared shattered, as if the last shred of hope he clung to had been taken away. He had previously told James that he did not expect a miracle, but there was always a glimmer of hope that the test had been incorrect. Seeing the confirmation in black and white felt like the last nail in the coffin. Todd grew even more withdrawn after receiving the news. I saw it coming, but I wasn't expecting what occurred next. Todd apparently did some research after receiving the results and tracked out the man with whom he suspected Sarah was having an affair. Todd told James that this guy was Sarah's co-worker for more than a decade ago. Todd had misgivings about their connection for a long time, but Sarah always dismissed them as work issues. Todd now understood what was going on. He recalled Sarah and this man being extremely close, attending work parties together and messaging late into the night. She was always making excuses to Todd, convincing him that everything was fine. However, it appeared that all of those suspicions were coming true. Todd decided to confront the person. He traced him down to his home and went there without informing anyone. Todd wasn't in a good mood, as far as I could tell. He was hurt, angry, and desperate for an answer. Things moved swiftly. Todd wasn't having it, even if the guy initially disputed everything. It immediately escalated into a yelling confrontation, and it wasn't long before things became physical. Neighbors heard the disturbance and phoned the police. By the time the cops arrived, Todd and the other man had been beaten badly. Todd was arrested for assault, and he now faces prosecution. It's a mess. James had to go down to the police station to help Todd. He bailed him out, but Todd now faces major legal consequences. He's claiming that the fight was provoked, but it will be difficult to prove in court. The whole thing is spiraling out of control, and I can't help but wonder if it's all because Sarah chose to hide the truth for so long. Todd is disintegrating, and it's awful to see someone who was always so composed fall apart. Meanwhile, Sarah has been scrambling to contain the damage, but it's much too late. Todd has now filed for full custody of the children, citing the affair, paternity testing, and fight as proof that Sarah is an unsuitable mother. Sarah is in a panic. She's trying to persuade everyone that Todd is the problem, labeling him a psychomaniac and citing the fight as proof that he's unstable and dangerous. She's frightened that Todd will take the kids away from her, so she's lashing out at everybody who disagrees with her. The tension between Sarah and Todd is growing by the day. Todd is furious with her for years of deceit, and Sarah is anxious to keep some control over her life, which is disintegrating around her. I can see the toll it's having on both of them, but I'm most concerned about Tommy and their daughter. Todd has been talking about moving out of state with the kids to put some distance between them and Sarah. He believes that the children deserve a fresh start away from the tumult. But I am not sure. I appreciate his desire to protect kids, but removing them from everything they've known could be more harmful than beneficial. And legally, it will be a difficult battle. Sarah, as always, is in complete meltdown mode. She's been contacting me constantly, alternating between pleading for my assistance and accusing me of turning James against her. Dealing with her mood swings is extremely demanding. One minute, she's pleading for help, claiming she's been wronged. The next moment, she's shouting about how James and I are involved in some vast conspiracy against her. I wish I didn't feel sympathy for her, but a part of me does. She is certainly spinning. But, at the same time, I can't deny that she brought it all on herself. It's difficult to watch someone self-destruct, especially when they refuse to accept responsibility for their actions. When I last saw Sarah, she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were red and puffy, and she kept saying how everything was falling apart, and how Todd was attempting to take her children away. She denies that her own actions are to blame for this situation. She still perceives herself as the victim in all of this, which makes it difficult to communicate with her. She's attempting to transfer all of the blame to Todd, but anyone who has been paying attention can see that the situation is far more complicated than that. At this point, I don't believe we have any choice except to get engaged. We are already knee-deep in this mess, whether we like it or not. James believes we should help Todd deal with the legal troubles he is experiencing, especially since Todd appears to be the more stable father in this situation. But I'm concerned about how this is affecting the children. They're caught in the middle of a conflict they didn't ask for, and I'm frightened that they'll be the ones who suffer the most in the end. Tommy, especially, appears to be struggling. He's always been a sensitive child, but I've observed a shift in him since all of this began. He's quieter, more withdrawn, and clearly perplexed about what's going on. I can't imagine how it must feel to learn that the man you've always called dad isn't your own father. Nathan has asked me several times why Tommy doesn't want to play as much anymore, and each time it crushes my heart. I'm not sure how to explain it to him in a way that he will understand. The situation is spiraling out of control, and I have no idea how it will end. Every time I think it can't be any worse, something new happens, dragging us all deeper into the insanity. We're simply trying to take things one day at a time and hope for the best. But it's difficult to be hopeful when the future appears so uncertain. I'll keep you all posted as things go, but for the time being, we're simply holding on and hoping for a resolution that won't absolutely destroy these kids' lives. Update 3. Hello, everyone, it is time for the final update. A lot has transpired since my last post, and I believe things are finally starting to settle. We're not totally out of the woods yet, despite the roller coaster ride we've had. But it appears that the worst is behind us. I've been contemplating everything, and I wanted to express how things have progressed. First, let us discuss Todd and the man Sarah had an affair with. You're all aware that Todd was detained after the confrontation became physical. What I didn't mention earlier is that the issue worsened even further. Initially, we believed Todd would face substantial charges for the incident. However, in an unexpected change of events, the guy chose not to press charges. Todd told us that this man wants to disassociate himself from the whole affair. He was probably aware that his engagement may make matters worse for him, both personally and professionally. While he admitted to the affair when the police arrived, he has now severed relations with both Todd and Sarah. In some ways, that chapter of the story has come to an end, and to be honest, I believe it is for the better. Todd does not need to continue battling with someone who clearly has no regard for the consequences of his actions. Now, the bit regarding the kids has been the most emotionally draining for everyone. Todd had initially applied for full custody of Tommy and his younger sister, which understandably caused Sarah to panic. Todd, however, had a breakthrough following some difficult meetings with his lawyer and some profound thought. He recognized that no matter what the paternity test showed, Tommy and his sister were still his children. He has been their father since birth, nurturing, loving, and guiding them. That relationship cannot be severed with a DNA test. Todd informed James and me that he is no longer fighting for custody out of anger or vengeance. Instead, he is doing it to protect the children from the upheaval Sarah has caused. He is desperate to protect them from the consequences of her conduct, and he has been absolutely amazing throughout. It's evident how much he adores those children, and that has been his primary emphasis in everything. He has made it a point to remind them that whatever happens between him and Sarah, they will always be his children. He loves them unconditionally and isn't going away. Todd's handling of the chat with the children was exceptional. He sat them down and described the problem in an age-appropriate manner, not giving them too much information, but just enough to understand why things were changing. He told them that they had done nothing wrong and that this was not their fault. Tommy, in particular, has struggled to digest everything. I believe Todd's assurance that he is still Tommy's father, no matter what, helped to alleviate some of his bewilderment and anguish. Tommy is still struggling, but he isn't as lost as previously. Sarah, on the other hand, has been an absolute wreck. She's still in full panic mode, urgently attempting to save her relationship with the children. But she's not doing it the right way. Instead of focusing on their emotional needs, she has been preoccupied with her own issues, such as managing her public image and cleaning up the mess she caused. Meanwhile, Todd has been attending their school events, driving them to doctor's appointments, and ensuring their well-being. It's terrible to see, but Sarah seems more concerned with how things appear on the outside than what's going on inside her family. The custody battle is still underway, but Todd has shifted his strategy. He is now advocating for shared custody rather than full custody, recognizing that the children still need their mother in their life, despite everything. Todd is attempting to be the bigger person here, acknowledging that, as damaging as Sarah's actions have been, the children should not lose their relationship with her entirely. Nonetheless, Todd continues to advocate for primary custody because he has been the more stable father throughout. He wants to provide the children a sense of stability and normalcy, which they have been missing for a long time. Based on what we've heard, the court appears to be siding with Todd. He has proved that he is the one who provides stability for the children, and his love for them is obvious. Unfortunately, Sarah is not helping her own cause. She's still making everything about her, portraying herself as the victim and citing Todd's previous outburst as proof that he's unfit. But everyone involved understands Todd's outburst was motivated by hurt, and he's been doing everything he can to move on in a healthy way. Sarah and Todd's marriage is over. The divorce is underway, and there is no going back. Todd is now at peace with this. He's told James and me that he's no longer furious at Sarah, just sad. It's sad to think about what could have been. I'm sorry their relationship ended the way it did. It is unfortunate that it has had such an influence on the children. But he is also focused on going forward. Todd's top priority right now is his children, and he's doing everything he can to be the best father possible. James and I are doing well despite all of this. It's been difficult to see everything unfold, but we've tried to be supportive without becoming overly involved in the drama. Nathan and Tommy remain as close as ever, and we've been making sure the boys spend time together to assist Tommy cope. I think it's been beneficial for both of them to have that connection, especially because everything else feels so unstable. One thing I've learned from all of this is how resilient children can be when surrounded by love. Despite the tumult, Todd's love for his children has served as a stabilizing force, keeping them on track. We've all tried to help, but in the end, Todd's strength and determination will see them through this. I'd also like to take a moment to thank everyone for their tremendous support. I never dreamed that a DNA test would change my life so dramatically, but here we are. Your wisdom, good words, and support have helped me more than I can express. Navigating this scenario has been difficult at times, but knowing that there are others who care and understand has made all the difference. I'm hoping that this will be the final significant update I need to provide. Things are still in motion, but I am hopeful that the worst is behind us. The kids are still surrounded by affection, which is ultimately what matters. Thank you again for staying with me on this trip. Let's hope the next chapter is one of healing and harmony. Now to the next story 6. My parents funded my sister's lavish wedding, then handed me the bill. They never expected what I'd do next. I, 32M, was my parents' first kid. They own a healthcare firm and were both highly involved, so I was effectively parentless throughout my youth. I had few intimate moments with them and was always in the care of my nannies. My parents, still in their prime, opted not to bear the responsibility of parenting. They lived a luxury lifestyle, frequently spending over their means, but because they each had sizable inheritances as a safety net, they always landed securely, despite their spendthrift tendencies. My parents had a daughter, Emma, 8 years after my birth. With Emma's arrival, I realized that their neglect of me was not due to their busy lifestyle, but because they just did not like me enough to spend time with me. Over the years, I discovered numerous causes for this treatment. I was a normal-looking child with average intelligence, an introvert who only spoke when spoken to. Emma, on the other hand, was just what my parents needed to position themselves as a perfect family, in their professional circles. She was a stunning baby with blue eyes and curly golden hair. She had inherited my parents' greatest qualities, and even as a youngster, she could fascinate a small crowd with her antics. Her presence solidified the perfect family picture that my parents desired to project. Emma had special treatment, but this did not imply that I had a difficult existence. I was fortunate enough to attend an expensive private school and then a prestigious university. However, the male treatment I experienced throughout my upbringing taught me the value of working hard and earning respect. I worked tirelessly in school and university to earn a well-paying position. Once I secured a job, I worked hard to go up the professional ladder as rapidly as possible. Despite maintaining communication with my parents, the wounds of childhood maltreatment never healed. Emma, as the golden child, was never expected by our parents to work hard. She was an ordinary student to begin with, and because our parents indulged her, she constantly failed her studies. She dropped out of high school, but our parents continued to employ her at their business. Even yet, she was absent most days, and when she did show up, she stayed for only a few hours. She had disagreements with all of her coworkers, and they loathed her presence in the office. Friends and family frequently told me about Emma's temper tantrums and the drama that ensued. However, it devastated my heart how my parents kept this from me. During a visit to my parents after I had established my career, I expected to have a serious conversation with Emma on their behalf. I believed a family intervention would benefit her professional life. When I arrived, Emma was nowhere to be found, and my parents made me feel foolish by stating she ran half of their firm. I could tell my parents were gently comparing my accomplishments to Emma's. That's when it hit me. My parents saw me as the child that grew up without their meddling, whereas Emma was the one they reared with their guidance. It would have been a shame for my parents if I had achieved more in life than Emma. At 19, I was already succeeding in university, whilst my sister, who was the same age, was out partying. Nothing changed throughout the years. Emma remained to live with our parents while I grew in my job. My relationship with Emma deteriorated during these years, for reasons I did not fully understand. As her older brother, I attempted to comprehend what she was going through. Everyone except our parents contrasted her life to mine. She was continually told to follow in my footsteps and achieve success, but that was not her goal. These parallels compelled our parents to overcompensate by giving her undeserved advancements in their company and giving in to all of her demands. My sister was growing up without the ability to accept responsibility for anything, which concerned me. However, I had no role in her life to intervene and advise her. My parents had already kicked me out of their lives since I outshone Emma at parties and family gatherings. Emma preferred it this way, so I established my own social group in the city where I lived. 2 years ago, I met my wife, Danielle. Danielle worked in the fashion sector, something I never envisioned myself being involved with. I had the worst fashion sense, and I still don't understand how a woman with such refined taste in fashion fell in love with me. Her presence in my life enhanced how I portrayed myself, improving my confidence. Strangely, the emptiness left by my parents, which had persisted since my early youth, has finally been filled. Danielle's presence in my life allowed me to discover aspects of my personality that I was previously unaware of. So it's not an exaggeration to state that she's the best thing that's ever happened to me. After a year of dating, Danielle and I decided to marry. Because we both had a limited circle of close friends and family, we chose to have a lavish ceremony. We planned a destination wedding and, after much study, debate, and discussion, chose Venice as our site. I won't go into detail about the wedding, but we paid for all of our invited guests' travel fees and hosted them in the best possible hotels. Most of our guests had never experienced a ceremony like this before. Emma urged me to purchase a ticket for her boyfriend as well, which I joyfully agreed to, despite Danielle's advice to hesitate. Throughout the wedding, I detected jealousy in Emma's eyes. She was frequently consoled by our mother. My parents were in awe of the wedding I had planned, but they kept their joy to themselves. Even before the wedding, my family had ignored my attempts to arrange a family dinner with Danielle. They maintained this conduct even after the wedding. After a while, I gave up trying. Around the same time, I realized that my parents were bad-mouthing me to those around them. They informed others that I had taken their money to finish my studies and find a career, just to abandon them in their old age. My father even stated that he would not leave me a dime of his fortune. My aunt on my father's side, who has always supported me, was nice enough to warn me about what was going on at home. It would be a lie to claim that it did not hurt me. Losing a family member is a difficult experience, and Danielle helped me get through it. I learned a few months back that my sister was arranging her wedding. My aunt told me that Emma was blown away by my wedding and wanted something similar for herself. She even convinced her fiancé to propose to her and began organizing a lavish wedding in Tuscany. However, neither she nor her lover had any money. So she approached our parents and requested them to pay for her wedding. To no one's surprise, they cheerfully approved her request. However, they could not afford a wedding in Tuscany. So they requested her to change the location to Hawaii. After considerable opposition, my sister gave in and planned an elaborate wedding there. Throughout the preparation process, neither my parents nor my sister wanted to involve me in any way. I even met them once during this time, but they kept quiet about the wedding plans. So I accepted the fact that I wouldn't be invited to my sister's wedding. My parents surprised me a few weeks ago when they invited Danielle and me to supper at their house. This was the first time they had asked Danielle around, so my unsophisticated mind assumed this was the first step toward repairing my connection with them. The dinner was good, but afterward, my folks dropped a bombshell. They informed me that they had incurred significant business losses and that an anticipated litigation loomed over their heads like the sword of Damocles. They could no longer afford my sister's wedding. They also couldn't let their golden child down. So they invited me over to see if I could help fund the expense of her wedding. The dinner was not an attempt to reconcile our differences. Rather, it was an opportunity for them to utilize me to make their favorite child happy. I was enraged on the inside, but without asking Danielle, I accepted their offer. However, I had two conditions. First and foremost, I wanted complete control over the wedding style. Second, I wanted to give a speech at the wedding. They were startled because I wasn't normally the one to offer speeches. They didn't care as long as I helped them maintain the prestige of their favored child. Emma's wedding was far more crowded than my own. In addition to her acquaintances, family members from both sides of our parents' families were invited. This was an excellent opportunity to express myself, which is why I insisted on giving a speech. The wedding day eventually arrived, and I could tell Emma was unsatisfied with the arrangements I had made. We had extremely different interests, and I knew that whatever I selected, she would find a way to perceive it as a bad decision. But I was there for one reason: to deliver my speech. When the time came, I asked Danielle to videotape it. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, "I want to take a moment to thank my parents for giving me the opportunity to speak today." My parents exchanged confused looks. They had expected me to speak about Emma, not them. "You see, for years, my parents have ignored me," I went on. "They never supported me or treated me with the same love and affection that they did my sister. But now that they need anything from me, they creep back." As my remarks took effect, the room fell silent. My parents looked uncomfortable, and Emma appeared to be about to cry. "But I'm not bitter," I added, smiling. "In fact, I am grateful. You see, this wedding has given me the opportunity to demonstrate to my parents my success and accomplishments, and I must admit, it feels quite wonderful." I went on to give a speech about how my parents treated me differently and how, despite all of my successes and accomplishments, it still hurts me. My parents sat quietly, their faces flushed with embarrassment. As I finished my speech, I approached my sister and hugged her. "I'm so happy for you," I said truly. "I hope you have a wonderful life with your husband." And with that, I left the reception with my wife, leaving my parents and sister behind. I drove back to my hotel room and sat here, satisfied. My parents have always portrayed themselves as the ideal parents, and this is a significant part of their reputation in our town. I'm glad I finally had the chance to tell everyone how I was genuinely handled. However, I feel a little awful about doing it during my sister's wedding. Am I the a-hole for destroying my sister's wedding day by giving a speech on my parents' carelessness since childhood? Update 1. Emma entered my room shortly before midnight and hugged me tightly. She was crying, and I sobbed with her. Danielle moved out of the room to provide us some solitude. Emma told me she had never heard my side of the tale. She had always assumed that I remained aloof from my family because I desired to be. Our parents had made sarcastic remarks about me to her since she was a child, creating a terrible image of me in her mind. I apologize for ruining her wedding day. To my amazement, she was incredibly understanding, even saying that our parents deserved it. This is the most heartfelt talk I've had with my sister since she was born. Update 2. 1 week has passed. I had not met my father or mother before leaving Hawaii, but my mother called me today. She informed me that Emma had ceased speaking to my father. My speech made a significant impression on her, but my father viewed it confrontational and disrespectful. He chose to cut all relations with me. Emma ceased talking to him after she discovered the truth. My mother begged me to act in some way because the situation was causing her distress. Update 3. Yesterday I did something inconceivable. I invited all of the family members to supper and let them discuss their differences. After feeling orphaned and lost for the previous 32 years, I suddenly feel like I'm leading a family. During supper, I discussed my differences with my dad. Though he was too stubborn to accept his shortcomings, I knew he recognized that he had not been a good parent to me. My mother apologized for not being present for me as a mother. I did not turn out badly, so there was no reason not to forgive her. By the end of the evening, I had ensured that the conflicts between my sister and my father were settled. It is odd to be involved in family matters, but my only concern is whether this will continue or not. Comment. Ash, your family is a bunch of rich a-holes who have been making money for generations and have no idea what to do with it. What's wrong with being raised by nannies when kids are abandoned on the streets? You were loved and cared for as a youngster, which is why you grew up to be successful and can now afford 2 expensive weddings consecutively. NTA, but you might have done this sooner rather than being a doormat for so many years, hoping your family would learn from their mistakes and begin loving you properly. You should also learn to communicate more effectively rather than waiting until the last minute to explode. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.